Today, you're going to learn how to give advice without being pushy. People generally don't like unsolicited advice. This isn't one of the main tips for this video, but I'm against giving unsolicited advice 99% of the time, unless you're somebody's direct supervisor, in which case it's probably part of your job. It almost always leads to negative outcomes. Giving advice to somebody when they didn't ask for it directly can feel pushy, bossy, presumptuous. Some listeners will interpret it as a power move that you're making, as if the person giving the advice is putting themselves above you. And that makes sense. Growing up, it's usually parents, teachers, coaches, and other authority figures who give us advice and tell us what we should do. So this video will help you avoid all of that. In fact, if you follow the tips here, the other person may not even interpret what you say as advice. They'll just see it as a helpful conversation. I'll give you 3 tips and a bonus tip at the end. Tip number 1, ask them, have you thought about what you might do? This is what the best advice givers do naturally. They let the other person give themselves advice. Many professional therapists use this because it's so powerful. So let's say you're in a situation where you're talking to somebody about their problems and they're venting their frustrations and spinning around and around. And then you start to wonder, what are we going to do about this? What are they going to do about this? Now, once it sounds like you've heard about the issue in a well-rounded way and you're getting a pretty good picture of what the person's struggling with, and possibly they're starting to repeat themselves, you can just ask them with care and with patience, have you thought about what you might do about it? Or have you thought about a plan to move forward? Or do you have any ideas about what you could do to move forward? These are all variations, and you should put these in your own words. But this shows a few things. It shows that you're listening carefully, and it signals to them that you believe in them. It signals that you think it's possible they've already figured this out. Sometimes they will say, yeah, absolutely, I know what I'm going to do. And they already have a possible solution in mind, and that's great. I did this on a call with an executive client recently. He's a smart guy. So before I launched into my advice, I asked him if he had any ideas about what he might do about this issue. And he said yes. And he explained his entire plan. And it was a great plan. I just helped him crystallize his plan by asking a few clarifying questions along the way. Now, if I had launched into my advice, it would have been a misstep in that situation. Now, if they haven't yet thought about their own solution, then when you ask this question, that signals to them that it's an important step in the process to move forward. Just by asking them a question like this could put them in a more empowered frame of mind to think of their own solution. And if they don't yet have a solution yet, don't be too quick to jump in on your side of the conversation to offer one. Just trust that merely by asking the question, you've planted a seed in their mind that they are capable of coming up with a way forward. The magic of this step is that any solution they come up with that's their idea is going to be better than any advice you might give because they'll feel ownership. Even if you have great advice, you may have found in the past that people are very slow to take other people's advice. They prefer a plan that they came up with themselves. And tip number 1 helps them move in that direction. Number 2, ask them directly if they want advice, help, or your opinion. So ask them directly instead of assuming that they're coming to you for advice. This will save everybody lots of problems. Now, they could be coming to you for advice, or maybe they just want to vent. That happens a lot. If you ask first, then you have avoided giving somebody advice who is probably going to reject it and feel weird about your advice when they never asked for it in the first place. Sometimes people need to vent about the problem for a while before they're ready to move on to the solution phase. Sometimes venting to you and having somebody listen patiently is all that really needs to be done in many cases. One of my colleagues is excellent at this. I remember venting to him about an issue, and he let me go on about it for a while. He listened really well and finally asked directly if I wanted his advice. I thought about it for a moment and I realized, not really. I finally felt heard by somebody. I could then accept the situation as is, get over it, and move on. And that happens a lot. But other times when you ask them if they want advice, what will often happen is that they already have an obvious solution somewhere out there available, but it's still in the back of their mind. And by asking them if they want your advice, they may say, no, not really. I think I know what to do. Or the obvious solution to the problem will come to the front of their minds as soon as you suggest that you may have some advice of your own. Now, on the flip side, they may respond very openly and say, absolutely, I'd love your advice. I have no idea what to do. That will almost never happen. But if they do say this after you've asked them directly, they've given you explicit permission to speak into their lives, to give them direct advice. And once they hear themselves give you permission, they'll be much more likely to hear and take your advice seriously. But even if they don't actually put your advice into practice, at least you've asked and they've given you permission. That will almost 100% avoid the perception that you're being pushy, which is the point of this video. Third, when you give advice, use lots of I language. I've been getting pretty good at this over the last several years in one-on-one, face-to-face conversations. If we come to a place in the conversation where it's obvious they want advice, maybe they've even asked for it directly, I still don't say what you should do. That's called you language, and it makes people defensive. You should do this, you should do that. Instead, the best way to give advice is to use I language to explain what you might do if you were in their situation. I language feels more invitational and it's easier to swallow. Here's how it would sound if they've already invited you to give them advice. Using I language, I will often say it exactly like this. Well, I'm not sure if this would work for you, but here's what I might do if I were in that situation. If it were me, I might, and then I would explain clearly and concisely the steps that I would take to solve whatever problem I was experiencing. Look at how many times I said I versus how many times I said you. Studies show that I language is a fantastic way to create a supportive connection between you and the other person because they don't feel like you're pointing the finger at them. It allows them to lower their defenses and listen to you talk about yourself and how you might do it. This is one of the only ways my teenage son will listen to me sometimes. He's not at an age where he wants to hear direct advice, you. He wants to solve his own problems, which is great. So I tell him what I've done in similar situations, and I even emphasize, this might not work for you, but here's what I did. And very often his attitude will get softer and he reacts, you know what, that actually might work for me. Either way, trust them to see potentially helpful advice in your explanation that they can apply to their situation. They might also hear some things that might not work for them. Either way, I language will help them listen to your advice more easily so they're not feeling like they need to defend themselves against your advice because you're talking about yourself. You're not pointing the finger at them. Now, sometimes, even though I've used I language, some people will still get defensive and push back and say something like, well, that wouldn't work for me. And that's fine because if you started with I language, then you have a wonderful fallback position. You can just say, I hear where you're coming from. I was just sharing what I would do in that situation. The way I'd handle it may not work for you. Let's talk about the bonus tip. Now, full disclosure or warning, you might not like this bonus tip. It may feel a bit like tough love. Now, at this point in the conversation with the other person, you've already helped them come up with their own potential solution, or they've given you direct permission to give them advice. And if you've given the advice, I hope you're using I language and not you language. So at this point, you already accomplished your goal. You have given advice without being pushy. Based on the title of this video, it's over. So the bonus tip is a mindset tip. Once the advice has been communicated, your task is complete. In other words, let go of the outcome. Unless you are this person's direct supervisor at work and you have actual authority over them, you have no right to expect them to take your advice or to hold them to it. That's not the measure of success. When your goal is to give advice without being pushy, you have zero control over whether or not the other person puts your advice into practice. Now, I know that might sound like tough love, but this bonus tip is for your sanity and will help you continue to have a positive relationship with the other person. I had a pretty good relationship with my dad, but one of his conversational flaws was that he would often give me unsolicited advice about big things, like what I should do with my life and my career. He'd give me ideas well into adulthood about businesses that I should start and run and big commitments of time and money on my part. Even though I never asked for his advice in the first place, he would often seem hurt and rejected when I didn't take his advice and put it into practice. And again, we had a great relationship. I love the guy. We bonded in lots of ways, but this was one of those sources of tension that would come up sometimes in my relationship with him. So I share this bonus tip about letting go of the outcome because it's important to see that there's a boundary between you and the other person, even when you're giving them advice. They have to make their own decisions. Even if they've asked for the advice directly, you have to let go of the temptation to want to control their decisions or actions. The outcomes of your advice are none of your business. As long as you've given the advice without being pushy, then you have accomplished your goal. Let them do whatever they're going to do next. Here again are the 3 tips plus the bonus tip. Let me know which of these tips would help you the most. I read all the comments and I look forward to reading yours. Until next time, thanks, God bless, and I will see you soon.